Welcome, or hopefully welcome back to the Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast, the show where we dive into the real stories behind entrepreneurship, the highs, the lows, and the lessons learned along the way. I'm your host, Mike Konrad, and today I have a truly inspiring guest joining us, Dr. Kyle Hulsebus, a third-generation chiropractor and health and human potential specialist with over 40 years immersed in the philosophy of health and well-being. Dr. Kyle brings a wealth of knowledge to our discussion. Beyond his chiropractic practice, Dr. Kyle is an author, speaker, and educator dedicating to aligning individuals and organizations to a state of wholeness. His unique approach integrates physical health with mental and spiritual well-being, aiming to achieve mastery across all 7 areas of life. I will ask him what all 7 areas of life are. Dr. Kyle's commitment to continuous learning is evident in his extensive study of over, get this, 13,000 books across multiple disciplines, enriching his syncretic knowledge. His proprietary system assists clients in balancing their personal and professional lives, fostering alignment within organizations. Drawing from his practices in aikido, tai chi, and ballroom dance, yes, I will ask him about that, Dr. Kyle delivers content in a unique and engaging style. Dr. Kyle's The 40 Over 40 initiative offers 40 practical tips designed to enhance health and longevity for individuals over 40. These tips encompass various aspects of well-being, including physical health, mental clarity, and emotional balance. If you're an entrepreneur, we certainly can use more physical health, mental clarity, and emotional balance. They range from simple practices like mindful breathing and daily walks to more reflective activities such as meditation and goal setting. Collectively, these recommendations aim to empower individuals to lead healthier, more fulfilling lives as they age. My conversation with Dr. Kyle begins right now. Stick around. Dr. Kyle, welcome to the program. I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah, Mike, thank you for the opportunity to share all these different aspects of health and human potential that I love to talk about.
Yeah, excellent.
And my extensive book collection.
I can see a very small fraction of your 13,000 books behind you. Yeah. I'm guilty of when I watch videos of podcasts or something like that, I will I'll freeze frame it and zoom in on the books to see what people are reading. But was everything in the bio accurate?
Everything in the bio sounded great.
I didn't give you too much. I didn't give you any stolen valor or anything like that. It's all real.
Well, my head's grown a little bit.
Yes, I noticed that. Yes.
That.
Yeah, that's all right. I can zoom out on your head. No problem. We're good if it grows even more. Well, as you start talking about your business journey and any possible mistakes you've made along the way, that tends to act as a head shrinking therapy,
sure.
Right?
We all get
very humbled over that. So let's just kind of start at the beginning. Your journey into health and human potential started early, given the fact that your family's history, you have a long family history in chiropractic care. What inspired you to take this path, and how has your approach evolved over the years?
Well, I took the scenic route to get where I'm at. As you said, I'm third generation. So, and we were in 2024, we celebrated 75 years of our family's practice, because Grandpa started in 1949. He opened up his practice. And 76 years, I think, here in a month.
I have to say, if your family's been practicing for 75 years, you ought to be perfect by now.
Yeah, it's amazing how the journey to perfection is a continuous process all the time, right?
Yeah.
So, as I tell most of my patients in the office, I go, listen, if you use me as an example, you're going to cry. Because it's probably a good thing I had a chiropractor for a father, or I'd probably be dead. So,
and maybe a grandfather as well. Is that the lineage?
Grandpa. Yeah. I mean, Grandpa died when I was a teenager, and unfortunately, he got to live to see chiropractic turn 100, which was his real objective and dream. But unfortunately, just life and stuff from World War II and all that, I think, caught up to him.
Yeah.
And he passed away. So I didn't get to know him as an adult, as a doctor and that. But Everybody lives on through my grandfather, through my father, through my uncles, through my cousin, who are older and had that opportunity a little closer to me. Now, me personally, I was one of those kids that said, I'm never going to do what my dad does. I love chiropractic. I'm glad we have it. I don't really understand medical care. When I was growing up, it was just kind of, well, if you have a problem, you get adjusted. And, if you have a real problem, you get adjusted more. And then occasionally, I think twice in my life, I can remember going to the medical guy. So, and I think I've only ever been to a hospital for the birth of a baby, or because somebody else went and I had to go help them.
Right.
So, but it was still one of those, I'm never going to do this. And so I embarked in a career in the arts, and my bachelor's degree from the University of Iowa is in theater and English literature. And somehow I've got most of a minor, I guess, in Buddhist philosophy. And just because I was very interested in studying it at the time. And then I was freelance writing. I was a bartender. I managed a shoe company. I did, all the various different things you could. And the acting life wasn't really for me, but I still, and even to this day, I still write and I tell stories as much as I can. But it was, and I did copywriting. I wrote some of your junk mail, which is real exciting.
Thank you very much.
And that's really what led me to finally go into chiropractic. I was living in the city of Chicago at the time, and I bartended a little bit. I was freelance writing. I was doing this copywriting. And one of the interesting things in the copywriting course I took, and they said, one of the biggest pieces you can be selling in the mail, and this was, even with the advent of the internet, you still had a lot. And it was, you want to be able to sell health products, because healthcare is big business. And of course, it was going to be holistic stuff. So it was going to be a supplement that contained all sorts of different stuff, including superfoods. And I didn't know what any of that was, but I had the Chicago Public Library at my disposal, and I went and I researched, and they said the big thing for this one is garlic. You've got to, garlic's what we're in there. So I know so much about the history of garlic as a health product, which is crazy. When you really look at it, it goes back thousands of years. But a lot of the stuff, because I was raised by a philosopher and a chiropractor, my dad, most of the way they looked at it didn't jive with my ability to sort of perceive how you could help somebody with this. And you understand sales and entrepreneurship and sales. If you don't really believe in what you're selling, you're going to fail. I mean, you can only be so far before you go, I am filling people's heads up with garbage.
Yeah.
And people just start to subtly pick up on it. So I couldn't write it. It was real fun. So I was calling my dad up, and I'm going, can you explain it to him? And he goes, no. He goes, it doesn't make any sense because it's not sensible. And you don't have a lack of garlic that's making you sick. And I go, that's right. And I had friends down in downtown Chicago, it's just 2 hours from my dad's practice, saying, we really need help, Kyle, and where should we go? And we trust you, so we want to go see your dad. And so I had friends that were driving every day 2 hours to see my father, because apparently the message got through speaking to me well enough, even though I didn't know what I was talking about. And then he helped people, and they were coming back and saying how much my dad helped them and saved their lives and all this other stuff. And I'm going through with my dad. My dad goes, well, you just go get the goddamn degree. And so you can be the doctor, because you're spending 90% of your time trying, doing this, and you're already there.
Might as well get legit, right?
Yeah. All you got to do is really get the degree and learn how to adjust people. And I said, okay. So I basically, within 4 weeks, I just, I flew out to California. I enrolled in school. I came back. I needed a couple months, a couple classes, and then I started and I went in and went through and graduated valedictorian in my class. So
wow,
it was just an exciting thing. And then we already had a practice, and I met my wife in school, and so I came into practice with my father, an associate that had been there since I was 8 years old, my older brother, my wife, and myself. And then across town, my cousin had a practice with his dad, my uncle, and then my other uncle.
It is definitely a family business.
Practices. Yeah, and my other cousin and her husband are both graduates of Palmer Chiropractic College. So yeah, we're all huge crew that we kind of.
I can imagine conversations around the Thanksgiving dinner table. Probably have a lot of chiropractic conversations and things like that.
You'd be surprised. They're a little more sarcastic than you think.
And philosophy-based conversations and things like that.
Well, you can get that, but then my brother married a nurse, and so we get this beautiful sort of panoply of philosophies that intersect, which is entertaining.
You talk about garlic. When I was much younger, I grew up in the Bay Area in California.
Okay.
So every year we go to the Gilroy Garlic Festival. Right?
Okay, I know it.
Gilroy's known for one thing, at least back then, and that was garlic, right? So they played the hand that they were dealt, and it was amazing to see just the culinary uses of garlic beyond, garlic bread and other medicinal things. I don't remember what any of those were, but I do remember being impressed by all the uses of garlic, and I just thought you wore it around your neck to ward off vampires. But
you did because it was a life-giving plant. That's actually where the belief came from.
Yeah,
because they would put it in the wounds of soldiers to try to stem bleeding, and surgeons in medieval battlefields carried garlic.
Is it like a coagulant or something? Does it? Who knows? Right?
Who knows? Yeah. You know what? I don't know if it really worked, but people were pretty certain.
Yeah, they believed it did.
And everybody knows that, you get enough garlic on your breath, it'll ward off just about anything.
It'll ward off, it'll ward off door-to-door salesmen and religious people knocking on your door and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And your entrepreneurship, I think this is probably a massive understatement, but entrepreneurship isn't always a straight path. I view, at least my journey anyway, similar to a pinball in a pinball machine. Just bouncing off all the bumpers, waiting to get down to the paddles. And were there moments in your career where you felt reluctant to take the next step and to maybe pivot or not pivot or just do a 180? And if so, how did you overcome those challenges and the reluctancy that may have been there?
So here's an interesting thing. If you remember, and certainly not everybody's going to, but if you remember late 70s and the early 80s and the United States economy.
I remember the long gas lines and inflation and 20% interest rates on mortgages.
Exactly. People are complaining now, and I go, 6%.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And now, granted, I don't remember it because I was, I wasn't there, but my dad certainly does.
Yeah, you remember your dad talking about it, right?
So my dad, but in probably a different way than you'd expect, because my dad and my uncles and my grandfather formed a partnership in 1977 when my dad finally graduated. My dad's the youngest of three. And when he finally graduated and got licensed and was in practice with them, they began a partnership, and they went and opened, I believe, 14 chiropractic clinics in the late 70s and early 80s at 17% interest. And people said, "You're nuts." And they go, "Why? We don't really care about the interest rate. We have a great product, and we know how to deliver it. So we're going to pay it off." And I mean, there wasn't, that sense of debt, because they just said, we know we're not really going to have to worry about anything.
Yeah.
And, the business plan was more that, just give us the loan and we'll take care of the rest. And they just went and opened clinics. And, they had, my grandfather at that point already had so many people on file in all the surrounding areas that it was wise too. It's not like they came out and they went into areas that had nothing. But in 1987, my dad moved all of us down to Tucson, Arizona. And they had no friends, no family, no business, no nothing down there. And he just went and opened a clinic and started. Now, it didn't work out. But he said in less than, I think, 9 months down there, without knowing anybody and just knowing how to run a business and create referrals and go do all that, he was up to probably 80 or 90 people a week, which is a lot for just kind of starting from scratch and nothing. But there were other reasons than just that to move back. mostly having family around was one. But, he had some of those bumpy roads, but he also instilled in me, he goes, what are you afraid of? So when I got into practice, I already had my brother there. They were all just kind of waiting for me to sort of do the same thing. Now, we talked about, opening, should we open 3 or 4 clinics? Should we do this? And in the end, we said, let's do something a little more centralized and let's just grow it. So the first thing we did was we said, all right, well, if we're going to do this, we're probably just going to do it once. And which is what the construction company told us. They said, make sure you put everything in there you want now. And so we put an addition on the clinic. The building had been there since 1989, and we expanded it by, I think, 2,800 square feet. And put a big addition on. We added a whole new different technique room. We added in new x-ray, just expanded the entire thing in order to grow and provide more services for people. And, we just went down to the bank and said, let's get a loan and we'll pay it off in 3 years. That was just kind of how we decided to do it.
It's interesting.
And if you didn't, you had a 10-year note, but, you said, well, let's just make sure we're paid off in 3 years. I think it took 3.5.
Oh, pretty close to the mark. It's interesting you say that. A mentor of mine once helped me understand the decision-making process. So using your father's example, interest rates at 17%, that would cause a lot of people to waffle on whether or not now's a good time to start a business. My mentor said, if you need to make a decision, let's say you're approaching a intersection in a highway, a fork in the road, you can either go left or right. And I really want to go left. But I don't have the time or the money, so I'll just go right. And so she would say to me, well, don't look at it that way. What if you had all the time and money in the world? Take time and money off the table, she would say. And what would the decision be? Well, I'd go left. She goes, then that's the right decision. And once I came to the realization the right decision is to go left, guess what came? The time and the money.
Exactly.
You almost manifest it right at that point. And it's when I look back historically over all the decisions I made, I can't tell you how many of them were fear-based decisions. And, if you can just, and I add one more word to her 2 things to take off the table, take fear, time, and money off the table. And you get this clarity all of a sudden. You just get this clarity. Well, I know if it's not going to kill me or my business, I know if I have all the money in the world to fund it, and I know if I have all the time to do it, then everything just falls, into alignment in terms of my vision. And then once I yep, that's the right move. It's just, I don't know, obstacles move out of the way. There's less fear. You find the money,
Exactly.
you find the time. It starts with that. If you live in the fear, you're never going to make good decisions. You're going to make, very compromised decisions. And guess what? It doesn't get rid of the fear. The fear's still there. Yeah.
And you kind of ask that question too, where you go, well, what's the worst that happens?
Right.
I end up back where I'm at, but I've grown.
Right.
I've learned.
Well, that's another thing she would tell me is just make peace with the worst.
Exactly.
What's the worst? Will it kill you? Well, no. Will your business immediately cease? Well, no. But nope. Okay. Make peace with the worst. Except, okay, this is the worst that can happen. Start over, reset, reboot, all that.
There's a goal setting journal I use that called the Hero's Journal. And in the very beginning of it, they sit down and they go, the great question that they have you ask before you're going in. And they say, what's the worst that could happen if you just start on your goal quest? And the very worst thing that could happen in 90 days, and say you hardly you don't achieve it. I'm going to go out. Say I'm just going to go out. I'm going to try to learn Dutch in 90 days, right? It's just for a random one, and I only study 10 minutes every couple of weeks, and then I buckle down for 10 days, and I learn a few words and all that. What's the worst that happens? Well, I learned some Dutch. but I didn't succeed in my goal. Okay, but you grew. You can't not grow. Just
Right.
going down the path. Otherwise, you're going nowhere.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But then they say, what's the worst that can happen if you don't do it?
I mentioned in the intro that you talk about the 7 areas of life. Briefly, what are those 7 areas?
So, and I'll preface this by saying, because people ask me why I'm doing 7 areas, and I go, one of the mentors that I studied under used these 7 areas, and I just like them. So it's very arbitrary.
Okay, well,
People are like, are these the ones I need to, because everybody will divide life up. I know people that use 10 or 12 or 8 or 4 or whatever. So the 7 areas we use are spiritual, mental, but now mental's behind me. Mental's learning. So not crazy mental, just mental.
Right.
We have financial, we have vocational, I use social, family and relationships, and physical. And those are the 7 areas of life. And then I divide them into the 7 areas of health.
I like that. I like that breakout. You've dedicated yourself to helping individuals and organizations achieve alignment, which is a little bit of a pun intended, because you're doing chiropractic alignment as well as emotional, mental, physical alignment. How did you transition from being a chiropractor, just a chiropractor? Maybe you didn't transition. Maybe chiropractic was the transition. But how did you transition from expanding your chiropractic practice into a broader focus on human potential and business alignment?
More that, like you said, maybe chiropractic was it. Because when I look back at it, I go, that was probably the missing piece where I could, I had to understand, I knew how to write, I know how to tell stories. I have no problem getting up in front of people and speaking, years in the theater and all that. But it's one of those areas where I was able, doing a few different chiropractic seminars, that I could meet some people, I could learn a few different things. And I realized that, hey, I can not just use this to grow my practice and the family's practice, but there's something I can do to have a broader reach, something that's going to allow me to get out and speak. I do use then my theater degree, my acting skills. I'm able to do writing. It's more something to help me fulfill my values, the things that I love to do and the things that I love to share. And when I started to take these underlying principles and the way my father raised me and brought me up, the way his father raised him and brought up this family, it was more, I recognize the need in the world, I would say, and maybe a want and a desire by people saying, I really want help. I just don't quite understand how to get there. And the only way I really know is through point A over here. And the reason I tell people is that chiropractors only see a fraction of the population is because we're not immediate gratification. We're long-term gain, which is sort of what an entrepreneur needs to see. And
as opposed to a cortisone shot or a steroid shot.
Well, which, and stuff like that is necessary. But, as I tell people, like if somebody comes in for just kind of a brief example, if you come into my office and you got real bad pain going into your leg and we say you got sciatic neuritis and say, well, I just want the pain gone today. I'm going to tell you the unfortunate news. You can't. But if all you want to do is get rid of pain and not have to feel pain, well, there's plenty of medications and hardcore things you can do where you don't have to solve your problem, but you can get rid of the pain. I mean, you're going to have to take those drugs the rest of your life. And you can see that shows up in the country. But as opposed to, I'm going to look at you and say, listen, you've got a problem in here, and it requires attention and addressing, and it may need medical care to get swelling down. But at the same time, we're trying to do long-term building of health in your body so you continue to express it, so that we're not just stuck in this cycle of pain, decay, and degeneration. And one thing I think that hurts chiropractic is we're not immediate gratification. You can see that there are professions now that would like to get into injections and medications because it is big money. It is attractive to just.
Well, someone comes in with pain, they leave without pain,
right?
With the same problem, but yeah.
So we're not pain doctors. We're more, and not to say that you can't get adjusted and it's not going to help certain types of conditions fairly quickly, but at the same time, my objective is to get your spine, your body, and your mind adjusted and in a line so that it's going to function and express its greatest potential all the time. But that means you're going to have moments of pain and pleasure.
Is your blending of spiritual and emotional and physical health unique to chiropractic? Is that more common in chiropractic worlds, or is that unique to you and your family philosophies?
You see it very unique in chiropractic. Now, there's factions in chiropractic just as you see in everything.
Right.
We start to have a little bit more of a mechanistic base chiropractors, and then you sort of have a little bit more philosophical, spiritual based chiropractors. Vitalistic and mechanistic, as we kind of say. And you see this in all the sciences. You see this in many different arts. You see this in medical doctors. There's medical doctors that are more sort of vitalistic, holistic. You just don't see as many of them.
Kind
probably
of homeopathic type medical doctors?
Homeopathic is a completely different thing.
Okay.
But, holistic is you sort of get, and it doesn't matter whether they're an internist, a general practitioner, your pediatrician. You get ones that are just able to look and see everything going on, not just this one part, this one problem. And they don't say, here's the only solution. They go, all right, let's look at you first, and then we'll start putting stuff into you later. I have a good friend. He helped me on my 40 over 40, as a matter of fact, and who's a cardiologist. He's the holistic heart doctor, is the way he bills himself. So,
interesting.
You've got that there, and then in chiropractic, we've got the same thing. And you just find that the ones that are a little more vitalistic, the ones that are a little more sort of principle philosophical based, have a little bit more spiritual, and that's not necessarily Christian or Jewish or going into a religion. It's just that we're a little bit more connected, I guess, with some more esoteric ideas.
Right. Yeah, kind of lowercase s and spiritual. It was a good segue. You brought up your 40 over 40. So tell me and my audience, more importantly, what is it? What inspired you to create this 40 over 40 list, and how do you see it helping people improve their lives?
Okay, so the 40 over 40 in basic is it's 40 days of 40 ways to help people have greater health and longevity after 40 years of age. Now, it's not limited to people that are 40 or over. The argument
Damn, I'm 39. I have to wait a year. Yeah.
And it's a fun little selling point. But my one friend wouldn't help me with it, and he says, "Why? I don't think you're helping people. I think you need to be telling this to 20-year-olds." And I go, "I understand that." I go, "But is a 20-year-old going to listen to me?"
20-year-olds are feeling no pain, right?
And except the ones in my office, they are, because I yell at them. But
you're the deliverer of the pain. Yeah.
The point was, and I had a quote from Carl Jung that I use in there in some of my intro pieces, and it was, we spend the first 40 years of our lives effectively learning all the skills and things that we need to have in order to really finally take off. And 40 is about the point where you start to see the culmination of your efforts. And then I started to study names and go through all these different people and say, well, who did do great stuff after 40? And one of the people that I've studied a lot of and love the work of was Dante Alighieri. Dante Alighieri, of course, lived in the 1300s, and he wrote the Divine Comedy. We've been to his place in Florence and had all that. And he was, I believe, 43 years old when he began that, and he was 53 when he finished. And then we studied people like, I believe, Brunelleschi, who built the Duomo on the cathedral in Florence. And he spent many decades of his life learning to get that before he started to have that culmination of talents. And then Mark Twain was 40, I believe, 42 when he finally wrote Tom Sawyer. And he was 50 when he wrote Huckleberry Finn. And he was, I think, 47 when he invented suspenders. And Sir Patrick Stewart was 46 when you finally heard of him, which was when he joined Star Trek. He was 46 years old.
Wow.
And
he was a theater actor, little-known theater actor before that.
He was fairly well known in theater circles. But
fairly. I mean, not well known,
but
the moviegoers of the world.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, aside from playing Gurney Halleck in David Lynch's Dune, nobody really knew who he was.
Right.
And so he did. He came and he played Jean-Luc Picard on Star Trek, and it really took off for him. But he was in his 40s when he hit that. And the guy that I can't think of his name off the top of my head, the guy that created Zoom, 41.
Yeah.
When the CEO of Zoom was 41. So we started to look and go,
and I'll throw in one more, Colonel Sanders. Colonel Sanders didn't have any luck with Kentucky Fried Chicken until I want to say his 50s or 60s.
I believe he was 67 years old.
Yeah.
And he was penniless and homeless, and he just had this chicken recipe.
Yeah.
And started the whole thing. And so or Ray Kroc even,
Ray Kroc,
McDonald's,
McDonald Brothers,
McDonald's Brothers, and thinking that. So there was a lot to that where you go, and that's when I looked, the way we came up with it, it was working in a mastermind group with some friends. And my one friend suggested it to me because when we were chatting, he said, what's the average age of patients in your office? And I had to, I guesstimated, and I go, probably anywhere from like 45 to 50. And he said, we've got Forbes 30 under 30. Oh yeah, I said, which I love to read, and I love to meet some of those people. And but they're the outliers. They're sort of the overly exceptional, and they're fun and they're beautiful to read about. But the average person is probably over 40 when they finally make it, which is where my study stuck. He says, well, how about we do the 40 over 40, and we'll have these 40 tips. It's kind of a gimmick. But for people over 40, and really to say, here's different things we've been living our lives, and sometimes you get to your 40th birthday and they go, the average lifespan is 72, so you're way beyond halfway. I wanted people to understand that your potential is just beginning, and there's probably habits you haven't worked on, and you're now at the point in life where your body's going to tell you, your mind's going to tell you, your family's going to tell you. There's things you want to address. And at 40, we tend to probably have a little more job stability in our life finally. So we've got a foundation to build on. At 40, we tend to have a little bit more financial stability. So, as we were talking about taking risks, you've got a little bit more of a cushion to sit on if we're going to jump and take some risks maybe. However, we also have more to lose, which makes it more exciting in the entrepreneurial world. But we probably have greater connections. We probably have more social stability at that point. Our relationships tend to be a little bit more stable. We've probably gone through most of our ups and downs.
Sure.
There's just, and we've learned, we don't realize we've learned, but we've been steadily learning, whether it's street smarts, whether you've been reading books, whether you've been absorbing stuff from comedy on TV, it doesn't matter. We've been putting all this together, and our brain just sits there and puts it together, and it puts it together in ways that allow us to fulfill the dreams, objectives, and desires that we have. Mm-hmm. And at 40, you're probably more qualified than you think to really jump into it, or at 50, or it's Colonel Sanders at 67. So that's where it really came from. And I tried to be broad and simple because I also think that most people are very busy at 40, and I didn't want them to have to work too hard to start to implement health habits.
Yeah, you talk about all these things that get into our brain, when we're younger. I liken it to, we're collecting ingredients because we're going to bake something someday, but we have no idea what we're going to bake. We just are collecting ingredients. And based upon how eclectic our collections are or how focused our collections are, we come up with either a sugar cookie or a creme brulee or something, something more extravagant. Kind of a lame example there, but I do think that looking back, all the stuff that I went through trying to build my business were really change agents for what I have now. They were necessary ingredients, and I didn't realize that at the time. They just seemed very random, and random experiences, random challenges, random failures, a few random successes, but they didn't seem to have a line. Looking back with perspective, you get up to 36,000 feet, and all of a sudden you say, "Oh my God, this was actually a path I was on. I just had no idea I was on a path." Right? It's like drawing by numbers.
Hindsight is 2020, right?
Hindsight is 2020. So many entrepreneurs. We're going to do a you've published and produced a 40 over 40. Let's do a 1 or 2 over 40. many entrepreneurs struggle with burnout, especially as they get older. Which of the 40 tips, one or two, whatever, 40 tips, do you believe are most critical for business owners to maintain their energy and their focus and to avoid burnout?
If they're fairly established and you're already in that stage, one of the greatest things that we can always do is my day 35 and actually my day 36. They're really related. Day 35 is write your vision and mission. And most entrepreneurs probably have done something like that, I would assume. But go back and reestablish it. Because if you're getting burned out, you probably feel like you're off. And if you're off on your vision or mission, you start to feel like, where am I going? And then day 37 is actually delegate things that are uninspiring. Because we also tend to, one of the biggest flaws of entrepreneurs is we got to be solopreneurs. And it was, it's one of those things where you go, I was doing that. I can tell you right now, without having a virtual assistant, that 40 over 40 wouldn't happen. Because there was no way I was going to edit all those videos, get them posted, make sure I had the time to put them all, because we did them at 10 a.m. every day for 40 straight days.
Wow.
And I didn't do them live. I pre-recorded them because my time wasn't going to allow it. But if I didn't have Marcia, my VA, doing that, it wouldn't have gotten up. It would have been, if you had to rely on Dr. Kyle, we'd still be waiting for probably day 50.
You'd be in the waiting room waiting for the next one. It would be 40 over 40 told over 180 days.
I know chiropractors that they open up and they try to run everything themselves. They're going to answer the phone. They're going to do their scheduling. They go, boy, we got all the apps. But you know what? I have people that answer the phones. I have people that do the scheduling. It's not that I don't know how to do that stuff. It's not that I don't know how to build things. It's just that I have people that specialize in it so that I can focus on being a doctor. So if I got an entrepreneur that's established and somebody they've fallen out of love with their business, your question you want to ask is, do you feel like you're no longer on mission and you're no longer on vision? And first go back and look at that and say, what is your mission and what is your vision? And if you just feel vague about it, go write it out. Go talk to your spouse. Go talk to your best friend, your business partner. Go talk to a random stranger down the street. But go write that out. Go get yourself some clarity on it, or call me. I'll ask you questions and make you figure it out. But make sure you're on that, because you may just not. You may just have to remember the moment you were called, and you may need to re-inspire yourself. And then you may be doing stuff that's really, you're going, why am I focusing on this BS when I got into it for here? Because if you read a biography on Walt Disney started off and first he was in the animation thing, and then he got people together to help create animation. And then they created Snow White, and they're like, wow. And everybody's going, my God, they're going to be the greatest animation. And then Walt just kind of walked away from the animation. Everybody was in there going, but he goes, well, we'll get to that. I've got this idea.
Yeah.
We're going to make movies now. Yeah. And then he made movies, and then they were like, but Walt, we've got cartoons, we've got full-length feature animations, we've got full-length feature movies. He goes, yeah, but we can create theme parks.
Yeah. And he was always one step ahead of them. Right?
And then unfortunately he died before he could bring it to fruition. But Epcot wasn't even supposed to be a theme park. It was supposed to be a community.
Yes.
And it was going to be
that. Yeah.
And that's where he had all this stuff. And then he died and nobody knew what to do. Now everybody goes, we don't know, because Walt was so far ahead of everybody else.
Yeah. I've often said that entrepreneurs make terrible bosses because of exactly what you're saying. I consider myself an arsonist, but not with fires. It's with projects. I'm a serial project starter. I'm a serial project arsonist. So I start all these projects. And when they get to 60, 70%, maybe it's a kind of a ADD thing or whatever, but I get this little shiny object in the corner and I'm like, oh, I'm going to do that. And my team has to follow me around to complete the project or trash it, depending upon what's appropriate. But I'm never interested in the final details. I'm interested in the conception of it.
Your value is more on creating.
Right.
So you may be more valuable at that point, Mike.
I'm not the tactical guy. I'm not the guy to
getting it going and finding out either can I put a team together to finish that or can I sell it?
Right.
Because I want to go create this now.
Right. But until I realized that is okay, I would kick myself and my team would be exceptionally frustrated with me. Now they know that's just the way my brain works.
You're just
some of
crazy
your
like
recommendations, like dancing and stargazing, might not seem like traditional health advice. Can you explain how these activities contribute to overall well-being?
Dancing is one of the greatest health physical things I think anybody can do. I could talk about just the overall, if you really get into it, where my wife and I we go to ballroom dance competitions. We're not crazy competitors, but we enjoy going out there with lots of dancers. When you start to get to a certain level, you'll find that it actually helps you overall health, your mobility and everything else. When I first started dancing, I ended up randomly partnered up with a lady that was 92 and her spine was fused, but she'd been dancing for over 50 years. And she was really good. Like, she was upset that I wasn't very good. And it was, so how did I get partnered with you? But very friendly lady. But, dancing is one of those great things that I even say in the video, I believe, I go, I don't care if you go do formal ballroom dancing. I don't care if you do ballet, if you're going to do jazz or tap, or you're just going to go down to the club and you're going to do it. Or you just move your body in a rhythm in your living room when nobody's watching, that old dance like nobody's watching. Get your body moving. And there's something to balancing yourself with the rhythm. We talk about being grounded. Mm-hmm. And while I've got tips related to that, in dancing, grounding yourselves to the rhythm of the world is, to me, grounding yourself to the rhythm of your body and the overall health. It's us trying to always adjust and bring ourselves back into line with all the spiritual principles, the physical principles, and everything else going on around us. So dancing, to me, I would say there's actually, I probably have a business book that somebody gave me around here that's basically, like business being one of the great dances you can do. And
it is a dance in many ways. Yeah.
So I can relate that the way I relate health to business. There's a lot of those same principles in there, because when you really get to foundations of things, you find out they're all working off the same principles. Yeah. Something like stargazing, the reason I tell people to go out and gaze at the stars, and I mean, really, if you're really ambitious, go to a dark sky park. You don't need a telescope. Go to a place where you can see the night sky and look up there and see the magnificence of the universe. There's a thing in our cell structure, in our chromosomes. It's called a telomere. And telo meaning, for same Greek root for telephone and everything. The telomere is the end. Telephone is to basically phone the other end. Mm-hmm. And so telomere is the end of the chromosome, and it slightly decays and unravels to allow a cell to divide and split. And there's been a lot of stuff in science and the news and on longevity of these lately. And it's more, what are the different activities and ways we can live our life that allow the telomere? We want to create an enzyme that actually rebuilds the telomere, because the longer our telomeres are, the more cell life we have, the more longevity, or at least expression of health and longevity, we can have. And one thing they noticed with Scott Kelly, I believe, when he spent a year up in space was, while in space, his telomeres lengthened. When he came back to Earth, they shortened again quite a bit. But, I had a theory behind that, and they call it the overview effect. If you study that with these astronauts and cosmonauts and everything, that you don't look and see different countries. You look and see the Earth as a whole, and you can see the sun beyond the Earth, and you can see the moon. And your vision becomes universal, not just terrestrial. And it will open up something in you. That's why, again, with Burnout, go back to your vision and mission. And can you make it last beyond your life? The founders of the writers of the Constitution of the United States did not look at just their lifetime. They were looking beyond. They left it open to interpret and have that. The great religions of the world did not create these things just for this lifetime.
For the moment, right.
Yeah. Like I got right over my shoulder right here, I've got, you can't see the title real well, but these are the writings of Cicero, spiritual writings of Cicero up here. And he didn't speak and do that necessarily. Maybe he didn't foresee that he was still going to be read 2,000 years later after, because he was from the Roman Republic. He didn't even live to see it become an empire. And but maybe he didn't even foresee that, but he had such universal vision, he had such universal impact because he was speaking on principles that went so far. So I tell people, go stargazing, go out there and look at the magnificence. There's a video of Neil deGrasse Tyson. I might have even quoted it in that particular thing. And Tyson was saying that he was on a program and he got a call from some psychotherapist saying, well, I'm so grateful for your thing last night because now all the people with anxiety are calling me up for business because they all feel so small and insignificant after you did that. And he goes,
unintended consequences.
And he said, I don't understand how you can possibly, it's a beautiful video, how you could possibly feel so small and insignificant. He says, I feel connected to such grandeur when I study that, that I am a part of that my cell structure, the atoms that make me up, and the spiritual being that I am is etherically and physically connected to this vast infinity out there, which maybe for some people is too much. But you're an entrepreneur. You want to go create a business? Guess what? You're connected. Yeah. There's a great quote by Dr. B.J. Palmer, the developer of chiropractic. I keep it on my wall at my office. I keep it on my wall here in my home office. And he says, we never know how far-reaching something we say, think, or do today will affect the lives of millions tomorrow. And, and he had that universal vision. That's why I made the 40 over 40, because I can adjust one person, but I can speak to thousands.
And for my audience that's hearing and seeing what all this 40 over 40 is about, I'll put a link in the show notes if you're watching this on YouTube or if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app. Just look at the show notes, and I'll have a link to Dr. Kyle's 40 over 40. I've watched several of them, and they're very insightful. You talked earlier about dancing, and kind of related to business. I would think that in the early days of my business, if I were to come up with the most appropriate dance, it would be breakdancing.
Excellent.
Very chaotic and injurious and all that. And then later, as the business kind of gets honed in, it becomes a well-oiled machine. You've been down the road before. You've got everything humming. I would equate that to more ballet. Just a beautiful, flowy kind of thing. But definitely in the early stages of business, I think there's a lot of breakdancing going on.
I'll contradict you a little bit, because did you watch the breakdancing in the Olympics?
No, I didn't. But I know it was there. But I didn't watch it.
There's a little more control in that than you really think.
Okay. Well, from a layman's standpoint, it just seems very chaotic. It seems very.
It does. It does.
Like impromptu and all that.
Yeah. But that's entrepreneurship right there.
That's
being able to pivot. It's being able to find the breaks in the music and make a pivot and just go.
And both breakdancing and ballet are both very technical, but ballet doesn't seem to have, at least to the layman, an obvious pivot. Ballroom dancing has its share of pivots and all of that, but square dancing, all that stuff. But ballet just seems to just be too fluid for that. It would be like ocean waves going, turning 90 degrees. They don't. They just always flow the same direction.
Yeah, there's very much. I would say I haven't studied a lot of ballet, and I'll send this we'll send this recording over to my friends Brett and Raisa Bauer, who were professional ballet dancers, so I get their take on it. And in fact, there's a video.
I said nice things about ballet.
There's a video of the three of us speaking on my YouTube, actually just having a random conversation about philosophy at their house. But there's, to me, when I watch ballet, it seems very structured, like very scripted, and I don't know how much improv you get in there. Maybe in rehearsals you do, but there's a little theater to it where you are going to improv to a certain amount. But yeah, I think there's a little more structure there. Yeah. Great entrepreneurs are a little bit are not. I would say great entrepreneurs have a little bit more improv work
Yeah.
because we do need to be ballroom works more for the way that I teach, because when we learn certain patterns and we learn certain little routines in ballroom where we're going to go out and do, the one thing we find out is if you put a bunch of people on the floor, and it doesn't matter if you're doing a cha-cha or you're doing a salsa or you're doing a waltz or a tango, there's other people of different levels around you, and you have to be able to pivot and adapt and move to keep going down the floor, or else you're going to run into people.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of improv. You always want to go back. What do they usually say in any type of whether you're in my profession, your profession, we're doing some type of entrepreneurship, we're making spacely sprockets or whatever out there. We have to want to go back to our basic fundamentals. They always say go back to the basics. Go back to the basics. And because that's where your pivot points are. In the human body and healing, your intelligence that runs your body, it goes back to fundamental principles to try to pivot and adapt when it doesn't have other options that are as efficient, because it's and that's where you get disease and you get symptoms, because there's certain regressive elements in there. When we adjust you and remove the interference to bring you back into alignment, now it has more options available. But as you take the options away, it always goes back to more fundamental, less, more rigid forms of adaptation, which is really interesting.
Yeah, interesting. Now, you're the reader of over 13,000 books, a few of them behind you. Is there a particular book that has profoundly influenced your approach to business and life?
Wow. I wouldn't call it one.
No, I know, but drop a few titles. Keep it under 500 titles out of 13,000. Are there? Let me kind of restate the question. What book would you recommend that you've read that would be quite valuable for someone just starting a business, or someone in the midst of it, breakdancing their way through it, with all the struggles, with all the self-doubt, with all the challenges that every entrepreneur will face? It's a rite of passage. What resource in terms of a book do you think would help them the most in that stage?
I'm going to go off on a tangent.
Yep.
Okay. And I got this from my same friend that masterminded with me, that helped me with the 40 over 40. Have you ever heard of Y Combinator?
No.
Okay. Y Combinator is like a think tank, sort of an entrepreneurial think tank. They came up with the ideas for DoorDash, Airbnb, things like that. The guy that founded that whole thing, or helped co-found that whole thing, doesn't have a business degree. He's got a philosophy degree. And, and he studied, you imagine he was studying, Francis Bacon and Nietzsche and Aristotle and Plato and Aristarchus and, things like that. And doesn't really have, didn't go out and study business and marketing and all this, which maybe is why he came up with Airbnb and DoorDash. And now they're doing all this AI stuff. I brought them up because they were in one of my news roundups today when I was reading. So that being said, the book I would recommend is something that was on our list for books to read as actors. And I have given out probably over 100 copies of this book in multiple languages. And the name of it is, and it has nothing in common with motorcycle maintenance, but the title of it is Zen and the Art of Archery. And it's a skinny little book. The author's name is Eugen Herigel, German. It looks like Eugene without the E on the end. And it's a gentleman who went to Japan, I think in the 50s, to study the Zen art of archery with one of the old masters before he died. And as a Westerner, it was a difficult thing. And it's him trying to relate this idea of how he achieved Zen Satori by studying this. And you're not going to walk in and get, here's the 10 steps for this. It's more, I'm trying to get you to think about the world differently. I want your perception to be a little, maybe, as I would say, a little cracked, a little esoteric. That's why you see some of those things. And, I put spiritual health tips in my 40 over 40 on purpose. Because people, one of my tips in 40 over 40 is go people watching. People go, how's that for health? I go out and see the wonderful panoply of people that's out there, and know you're one of them. So go read this book, Zen and the Art of Archery. And I never really ask anybody what they got out of it. I don't go follow up with anybody on it. I say, go read this. I don't know how many people have read it that I've given it to, but I've read it maybe 50 times. And I always take away something where I go, let me go reflect on the world and see if I can approach this differently.
Interesting. Well, to my audience that would like more information in that book, I'll put a link. I'm sure it's still in publication, I assume. So
yeah.
I will. I'll give the probably Amazon link in the show notes as well. We're almost out of time, so just a couple more questions. If you could give advice, just one piece of advice, which is not fair because you're full of advice, to an aspiring or struggling entrepreneur, what would it be besides read Zen and the Art of Archery?
Know your vision and mission. Sit down and look and go. And I'll tell you this, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just know your vision and mission. Have a guiding star. And if it changes, it changes. But mission and vision. Because if you have a mission and you have a vision to accomplish that mission, it doesn't matter if the words succeed and fail go away. Then it's just, I'm on the mission. Why did I fail? Because I was off. Right. I need to go a different path. So it's the journey.
The goal is stay on mission, stay on point.
Stay on the mission. Because we know the destination.
Right.
So we want to focus on the journey. And the journey is our vision and our mission to get where we're at. And most entrepreneurs, I think, Mike, I only know so many, but I think want to have some type of impact on the world. And they want to have some type of impact that lasts beyond them.
Yeah.
And so
one of our company goals is to be larger than the sum of our parts, to be more than just the products we sell and the customers we sell them to.
You want to be vitalistic.
Yeah. And in a, Pollyannish statement, we want to make a difference in the world somehow.
Of course.
We kind of want to make a mark. And I've said this on the show before. I talk quite metaphorically about the business gods, right? There's business gods up there, and they're like the old judges in the Olympics. They hold 10, 8, 1 out. And we have deserved repeatedly to go out of business. And I think that because we're quite philanthropic, because we have these goals larger than just the strict business goals, I think at some point I can just see the business gods talking to each other on their diocese and looking down at me and went, yeah, you know what? He's going to go out of business, but I don't know. They're doing something good here. Give them a pass. And I don't mean that in a spiritual manner necessarily. It's metaphorical, but I do believe that if there's more to the company than just a P&L, then statistically, for reasons that maybe you would understand better than myself, I think it improves your chance of success.
You're going to avoid burnout.
And you're going to avoid burnout because there's a mission greater than that. And burnout to me started happening not when things were at the most chaotic, not when things were fledgling. There was a fire, 10 fires a day I had to put out. And ironically, that kept me busy. I had no sense of time. I would go in on a Monday on a coding project, and I wouldn't come home till Wednesday, and those you think would burn people out. But to me, burnout kind of starts when your company somewhat plateaus. And then then it becomes monotonous and you miss the challenges and you miss the creative forces and all that.
You feel like you have no purpose.
Yeah.
Burnout is without purpose. So that's why you want to revisit. So if you're starting, mission and vision. If you're burned out and you've been there a long time, mission and vision.
Yeah.
Purpose will keep your body functioning. Loss of purpose is the greatest killer of mankind. Loss of purpose is the greatest killer of business. Loss of purpose is the greatest killer of religion.
Yeah. Well, to your point, I used to belong to a CEO peer group, and we'd have a speaker that would come in once in a while. And there was one speaker that I remember, one piece of what he said that I remember all these years later. And he was a business continuation expert, how to value your business, sell your business, whatever. And he said, the most important thing if you're going to sell your business and retire is you need a reason to set your alarm every morning. He didn't say these words, but you need a mission and a vision, even though it's not the business. Because statistically, if you don't, statistically, you're dead in 5 years. Those are just statistics.
I see it in my office. People retire, and it's weird. I mean, weird stuff shows up in their health. I mean, people that have been healthy and do it, and they go, "What happened?" I said, "You retired."
Yeah. Well, I'm somewhat retired from my business. I still own my business, the factory, but my team runs it. Frankly, way better than I ever did, and I still do a lot of public speaking in my industry. So I'm still involved, but I do this now, and I do another technical podcast, and I am busier. And I've heard people who kind of like me, I'm busier in retirement than I was when I was working. The difference is if I had 10 things I had to do before I retired, 4 of them I loved and 6 of them I hated, I would still have to do all 10. Now I only do what I love. And that fulfills me way more. And there's a lot of things I love to do, so I just do them. And I'm busy and I'm productive and I feel like I have value. Let me ask you this.
Yeah. And let me ask you this question. So I know you're the question guy today, but
feel free.
Do you feel like you're fulfilling your mission and vision more now than you did 10 years ago?
100%.
Absolutely. And do you feel that all you've really done is you've just transformed and transitioned and graduated to a higher level of fulfilling that than you used to?
Yes, absolutely.
Could you have done this podcast 40 years ago?
No.
Right.
No. I would have nothing to talk about 40 years ago. And if I did it in the first 10 years of my business, probably the first 20 years of my business, I would have an entirely different philosophical view. It would be very digital, binary, black and white, not analog. It would be just like, this is wrong, this is right. Next, this is wrong, this is right. Next, no, and I would probably have the no guts, no glory, no pressure, no diamonds, no risk, no rewards kind of thing. Just throw it all in there, which is probably really good advice. It's high octane starter fluid to start a business, which it needs, but that philosophy will kill your business.
It's that whole idea. You can jumpstart the car, but you got to keep it running.
You got to keep it running, right? I'm good at getting cars started. I am good at, not just metaphorically either. I am good at getting cars started. I used to be back in the day a pretty good mechanic, but not anymore. But I can start a company, and I am not gifted in scaling and sustaining a company. I mean, I did it, but I made a ton of mistakes. It cost me a lot of money. I could have got there faster if I had done it right, but I'm glad I didn't because, again, necessary ingredients for whatever the universe is baking for me. It's there. Last question, because we're about out of time. How did you define success when you first started your business, and how do you define it today?
When I really got into chiropractic, and then I got into obviously speaking and being able to work with people on this different level, I would say success was I made it through the day, and I
still alive.
I still have my license, and I don't have too many people cursing me, and I got new patients, and people got better, and I went, oh my God, it works. And in school, success was, I passed everything. Great. And,
right.
And so, now I don't define success because if you want a fun little tangent, I speak Spanish. Do you speak any Spanish?
Uno más tequila, por favor.
Uno más tequila. So the word for success in Spanish is éxito. And it does come from the Latin word excitare, which would be to leave, to be exit. To exit, to be go from.
Yeah.
So I looked up with my Spanish teacher. We looked it up because I said, that's really interesting, because basically then to succeed means it's the end. And success is the end. And we can even look up the etymology in English, and we find that success was the end point. So that's why
It's like on a GPS. You have arrived.
To have a
Drive
goal,
over.
to have an objective as a line to say, okay, we're going to meet these goals and objectives on our journey is wise, and we can check those off the list. But if we say mission accomplished, it's all over, your physical being will end it. I've watched it. I've known people, and it's bizarre. That's why mission and vision. Don't worry about succeeding. Worry about the journey, and know your guiding star, and because we know the destination for all living things. So go out and live that journey, and live it on that path that you choose, that's in line with you and who you are and what you want to leave behind in the world. Then you don't have to worry about such words as success and failure, and such words as pain and pleasure, because fail is pain. Yeah. Success is pleasure. Failure is pain. Instead, it's like, you know what? I will take any success and any failure in order to achieve
the mission and vision.
They're all going to serve me. One of the greatest exercises, I know we were getting close, but it was something I thought of earlier. One of the greatest exercises that any of my mentors ever taught me that I did was go back and look at all the different things you've done on your life. Like you said, all these random things and stuff you've been through. Go and look at all those and see how they contributed to make you the person you are today, and be able to say, thank you. I'm so grateful.
Yeah.
I had that experience.
Yeah.
Because they did.
I felt that. I experienced that feeling when I wrote my book. I would do a lot of speaking on entrepreneurship, mostly at universities. And so the more I spoke about my journey, the more anecdotes I started to remember. And the more I remembered, the more I started writing them down, because I'd forgotten a lot of them. And as I started writing them down, I started, filling in some narrative between these events, mostly for me, almost like a journal after the fact. And then I eventually turned it into a book. And as I was writing the book, I had this overwhelming sense of gratitude for all the stuff that I wrote about that was traumatic in the moment. And, I'm today I can say, well, I never want to go through that again if I can avoid it. But I am so grateful that I did go through it. Lawsuits and all sorts of things, and embezzlements, and just, having no cash and having to go through garbage cans to look for stamps that didn't have the cancel mark on it so we could mail out stuff. This is before the internet.
Lessons you had to learn, right?
They were trench warfare stories, foxhole stories, but so necessary. And so I think whatever the universe is baking for me is going to be spicy, because there's a lot of spicy ingredients in my journey. But I wouldn't trade them for anything.
Exactly.
Because it just made me who I am.
So when I speak with people, when we do workshops and that's actually, and even my wife joins me, those are the types of things we work on with people in trying to release, find that health and human potential, because sometimes not being able to say thank you is what's holding you back. Yes.
And there's a lot to be thankful for. And it's not just the, big orders we got and the recognition that we got. It's all the stuff no one ever saw. And,
exactly.
And all the nights, convincing my family everything was fine, knowing I'm lying to them and things are not fine and I have to figure it out. But yeah, that, it's a, pressure cooker, but there's a reason for a pressure cooker, injection molding press, it takes a lot of pressure to melt plastic and push it through a tiny hole to form a Barbie doll or something. But then you get a Barbie doll at the end of the day. Kyle, Dr. Kyle, thank you so much for being my guest today. I really appreciate it. For my guests who want more information on what Dr. Kyle does beyond, including his chiropractic practice, but beyond that, I'll have a link to his website in the show notes. And again, I'll have a link to his YouTube channel, which has the 40 over 40. I would highly encourage any, whether you're a business owner or thinking about being a business owner or on a payroll within a business or retired, check that series out. I think you will
And
find
you
it
don't have to be
inspirational.
over 40. You don't have to be over 40.
Yes. If you use my name in the promo code, we'll let you in at 39 or something like that. Don't wait till 40. If you could take that in now, even better. And then, I think it'll be a benefit to everyone in my audience, no matter where you are in the business world, even if you're not in the business world. So, Dr. Kyle, thank you so much for your generosity and for your wisdom and for sharing your journey with me and my audience.
Well, it's been a great time. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity, Mike.
Well, it's been my pleasure. Well, that's a wrap. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast. A very special thanks to Dr. Kyle Hulsebus for being my guest on the show. The Reluctant Entrepreneur Podcast is available on all major podcast sites and on the Reluctant Entrepreneur YouTube channel. We've been busy recording future episodes with fascinating guests, which I am excited to share with you. So don't miss out. Subscribe to the podcast to be notified when new episodes are released. We release new episodes twice a month on the first and third Tuesday. If you're an entrepreneur or know an entrepreneur who would like to be a guest on the show, please let me know. Visit mikekonrad.com/podcast and apply to be a guest. Just remember that's Konrad spelled with a K. If you'd like to reach out to me, my email address is mike@mikekonrad.com. Once again, Konrad with a K. And a little shameless plug here. If you're interested in my book, The Reluctant Entrepreneur, Anatomy of a Business Startup from Uncertainty to Unstoppable, it's available as a paperback and a Kindle version, both available on Amazon, and as an audiobook available on Audible and Amazon. Thanks again so much for listening or watching. Until I see you again, be unstoppable.